Welcome everyone. My name is Johan Weisbord. I'm the artistic director of the Luminato Festival, and thanks so much for joining us here for our third Lunchtime Illumination. And we have with us today Nicole Krauss, who did a beautiful, beautiful reading of a new short story that she wrote, A Garden is an Arrangement of Light. And Ohad Naharin, who arrived 6 hours too late yesterday from Israel, so he might still be a little bit jet lagged, or probably very much jet lagged. Ohad is the artistic director of the Batsheva Dance Company and the choreographer of Sadeh 21, which is a piece that was co-commissioned by Luminato and premiered in Israel already, and is going to premiere here on Thursday night at the Macmillan Theatre. And I'm very proud and happy that he's here. His company is really one of the greatest modern dance companies in the world. It was co-founded by Martha Graham and Baroness Batsheva, who was a disciple of Martha Graham's in New York. And I'm very happy to bring sort of two artists together who've known each other already a little bit, and to sort of show two sides of Nicole as well. Yesterday she was the subject of questions, and today you were the subject of questions, yeah, from the audience, and today he's making Ohad the subject of questions. And this was always sort of an idea for these lunchtime conversations, to rather have artists talk with each other, and sort of a secret hope of mine, and Nicole knows this but Ohad doesn't yet, that maybe also through these conversations and bringing artists together here at the festival from different disciplines, they might sort of start to think about doing something together for the future. So to sort of, you know, plant little seeds of ideas, and then maybe it's something that we can produce later on during the festival. I think they've prepared something special, which I don't really want to talk about. Didn't you? You told me yesterday. Nicole, of course, is a great author living in Brooklyn. She wrote Great House, which is her latest novel, and a history of love, which is an amazing book, and I encourage you to read it. You can actually have lunch here. This is why it's called Lunchtime Illuminations, provided by our wonderful hosts here, the Mill Street Brewery. And I want to thank L'Oreal, our partner in creativity, for making all of this happen. And now I hand over to Ohad and Nicole. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So we've been talking all morning, so.
Oh, you have an idea already.
I think I want to just start and tell you a little bit about how I first came to see Batsheva and get to know Ohad's work a little bit. About 2 years ago, I took my whole family, my kids, my husband, we went to Israel for the summer, actually for 4 months. And we lived half a minute walk from where Ohad works and Batsheva dances. And one night somebody invited us to come, just to come see a performance of a piece called Mamutat. And we went, and it's hard to describe that feeling of how I felt the first time I saw your work, but it felt so personal, it was so emotional that it was overwhelming. I actually found myself crying during it, and after it was over, I turned to the person who invited us and I said, I need to buy a ticket to come back tomorrow. And I came back by myself the next day, and since then I've been wherever I can. I'll travel quite far to see a performance of Ohad's work. And I think it's very hard for me. I'm completely out of my depth here, because it's very hard for me to talk about dance. I don't know if it's easy for you. I don't know if it's easy for anyone. But part of what is so affecting for me is that it seems, when I look at your work, it bypasses everything that language needs, the hard labor of language. You get at something. We were talking this morning about acupuncture, but it's a little bit like that. It goes in and it touches something and it releases a strong. Is it raining on us or what? It touches a kind of nerve, deep and powerful nerve. So we'll see what we can do today, having to talk about this without actually seeing it. But I encourage all of you to go and see Sade 21, which is playing on Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Is that right? No. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday at 8.
Sunday?
Oh, no. Thursday, Friday, and Saturday.
That's fine.
Look in your programs. So I wanted to start with something that another novelist wrote about in an essay about comedians. Some of you might know Zadie Smith. She wrote a quite beautiful piece in the New Yorker about following these comedians around, and after watching them perform, listening to them talk to each other, and what they would say to each other is, was it funny when I did that? Was this funny? When I looked like that line, was that funny? And she said there was something almost pathetic about it, but at the same time, at least they knew the right question to ask. And this is always something I feel as a writer, that what is the question? What is the question to ask you about to know whether something is good? So I wonder maybe to ask you what makes a work of a dance piece good for you. What is the question?
Hello. You know, when I do thank you, Nicole, first of all. Thank you for really being there in performances and able also to articulate some of, because I think you articulate beautiful what you feel, and we actually today I threw at her an idea that she's going to try to maybe write something that I would like to incorporate in my next work. So what Jon was saying actually started already. So when I talk to the audience and I ask them, do you would like to ask something? Usually the first question is the one that I want to skip. So your first question, can I skip it?
You have to come back to it. You're not excused from it. Maybe in the course of the conversation we'll get at it in different ways.
About what makes a good work?
Yeah, about what makes it good, because I think you have the same problem, maybe. I mean, only comedians maybe have the luxury of knowing the right question. I think for the rest of us, whether you're writing novels or whether you're choreographing, it's hard to know what is the right question to ask about what makes a piece work.
I don't know, I'm not sure about whether it's good, but to make, whether it's it or not it, to make it, I think a work of art, not only dance, it has to do with the ability to mix things. But more like when you mix something and you put it in a blender, so you don't really recognize the ingredients, but the end result is made out of all those ingredients. So I'd like to put content and form in the blender. So you don't separate the content from the form, and you cannot really identify it in a separate way. And then it's the music and the dancers' interpretations and the composition, the organization, but it's all really like in a blender, something that's why it's hard to talk about it, because in a way, I'd like to mix it in a way that you cannot really recognize so much the ingredients, but the end result is that mesh that come out of it. But also in it, it is very evident that there is a kind of what I call the Holy Trinity, which is the power of imagination, skills, and form. It's this kind of something that in anybody's work, also in your work, it's something that without passion, it's dead. Without skills, I'm not so interested in just passion.
You mean the skills of the dancer?
Skills of the dancers, a lot. Skills of the choreographer and composition. and then the power of imagination. So, so what did I say? Passion. Did I say passion?
No.
Ah, so that's
it's not
what
a
I was.
Trinity anymore.
No, I was making it up as I was saying, but the real Trinity will be then passion, skills, and the power of imagination.
One of the things that is so confusing to me when I watch your pieces, not in your pieces, but in my own response to them, when I try to unravel how they work on me, is trying to understand whether what's happening is that your movements are giving me a language for something that I always felt, but I didn't have the language for, whether it's opening something, or whether you're creating a new feeling in me by making a new language. Do you understand this? And we spoke a lot this morning. We watched Ohad's the piece that's being performed here. We watched it together on a computer, which isn't a great way to see dance, but I'm desperate because I can't stay. And I kept stopping you to ask you how this happened or how that happened. And very often in your work, there will be moments where it's like suddenly there's one gesture. I don't know, I always think about the duet. I don't know that I ever saw the piece. I saw you rehearsing this duet, where it's like a sword, it's a man and a woman, and it's like almost like a gesture like they're of a sword. Do you know which one I'm talking about? One is the woman is laying down, the man is kind of doing this gesture. That's why I'm not a dancer and he is, but anyway. But for example, you find out either a gesture or there's a whole series of movements like maybe it's a mamutad or kamuyod, I can't remember, where it's one man alone and he's doing all these things with his hands. It's like, and it's this desperation to communicate something, but it's the language that has to be created for this thing, or is it vice versa, the thing? So I wonder that with you, when you're creating a piece, do you sometimes stumble upon a phrase or a metaphor, for example, the meter of a river, maybe you can tell that then gives clarity to the feeling you were trying to get at? Or does it happen more the other way around? Or
I think there is something about the way I learn working with dancers, and also is a lot about, it is sometimes about inventions, but it's mostly about discoveries. It's something that is existing already. A lot of what I do with my dancers is I give them keys to open up something that is a treasure hidden in them. So the action of giving a key and open that treasure is a very simple task and very short task. But it can really open something huge that is already not mine. It's theirs, it's in them. But this action of opening up and giving the key, the right key, is very meaningful. And so I'm concentrating and investing a lot in finding those keys. And many times those keys had to do with the right word at the right time. So I don't know if I'm answering your question.
Give some examples of that, because, for example, this morning we were watching a piece where all of the dancers, 20 dancers are on stage, and Ohad said, I call this part a meter of a river. And I asked you, where did that come from? What does that mean? Is that an official title of that, or is that? And you told me kind of how it evolved.
It's inside there is a section, short section, that we call 1 meter of a river. In the process, I explained to the dancers that I'm looking for something that has to do with like viewing, not the whole river, not the beginning and ending of something, but just 1 meter. But 1 meter of a river means that river is something that flow and you can take with it a lot of stuff, a lot of information. It created an atmosphere, it created an intensity, and I divided the dancers to small groups, and each group has to create what we called 1 meter of a river, like 10 seconds of a dance that is very, very full. because when you watch a river, 1 meter of it, but when you watch it for 10 seconds, a lot of stuff can go through it. So it did help to bring out something that wouldn't be there without this title.
And then there was another example. There's a moment where a single male dancer is standing on, he comes on stage and he's catching his breath. And then he begins to make these vocal sounds. You described it as almost speaking without your tongue. It sounds almost like animal sounds, but also with human speech somehow under the surface. And you described what you told him in order to give him the emotional sense of what's happening there. Maybe you also want to share that. I love that.
The dancers make a sound that it's like he has no tongue. And what I tell him to say is I ask him to look at the huge construction building that is in construction, and talk to the people that are building there, and ask them questions and instruct them. And he's doing it from a state of mind of sitting, though he's standing, and being an old person. You don't need to know it when you watch it. It's not important that you understand this when you watch it, but it does create something that is right for this moment, this image.
And after I saw your performances in Israel, we're going to get to talking a little bit about Gaga later on. But Gaga is basically, Ohad will tell you more about it, but it's a kind of practice, language that he started for his dancers. And later it was opened up to regular people like us, all of us. And when I started to do Gaga for the first time in Israel, and then by some miracle it came to Brooklyn, 2 blocks away from where I lived, one of the things that fascinated me after a day of writing and using my brain and thinking about language and being so much inside my head was, of course, to go and begin to move. But also that what allowed me to move in ways that I felt that I had never moved before was the language of the teacher. So I've done it with you, I did it with Danielle, I did it with a few teachers. And each teacher has his or her own language, but they would come upon a phrase. For example, think about 2 highways crossing behind your back, and this movement up and down these highways, and so you have to begin to move your back and your torso with these highways. And suddenly that allowed me to visualize it, but not in my mind, but in my body. But it seems to me that there's also, this is one side of it, okay, so the language that leads to the movement, or that elucidates or clarifies the movement for the dancer, for you, the choreographer. But there's also the other side, which I was getting at before, which is, for so much of the work, there isn't language, there is only the movement. It's the only thing that can awaken that feeling or this place or this atmosphere. And I'm curious, to me, I've seen, I think, a lot of dance. I feel it more in your work than I do in other choreographers, this desperation to communicate, to get something across. I don't know that it matters as much to other choreographers as it matters to you. I think it speaks to me a lot in your work, because I feel it as a writer, and that's why I'm here. That's why I'm doing what I do. There's this urgency to get through, and the sense that it's hard to get through, that there's this enormous distance sometimes that has to be crossed to get there. So you have to create ways to get there. And I wonder, maybe it feels too direct a question or personal, but where it comes from, this kind of longing or the difficulty in communicating, or there are things that can't be said or that you feel you can't touch with words. Did you always feel that growing up?
Well, for me, to dance is very much the idea of surviving. I request it of my dancers that when they dance, they feel like they survive. And the desperation, being desperate about it, it's not a negative thing to be desperate for something. And they understand it too. And also the idea that when you dance, it's always like maybe it's the last time. The show, even the premiere, I ask them to feel like it's the last time that they're going to do it. Things like this that help this feeling that you're talking about. And also what I was thinking, as you were saying, that even though a lot of what we do is telling each other what to do, a huge part of it is about listening. Listening to each other and also listening to the scope of our sensations. It's like you tell your body to move. I tell my body to move my hand. You can try it actually. If you look at your hand, can you look at one hand and can you kind of move the inside and move your fingers? But now as you do it, can you also listen to what it feels like? Just do it and start kind of feeling. And all of a sudden you can realize that you can feel things in your forearms. And you can feel a flow of information, and you can feel how much tension maybe you have in your shoulder, and how much isolation you have in each joint of your finger, and is the palm of my hand using? Do I feel the skin? Do I feel the temperature of the skin against the air that you can start listening to a lot of, do you feel the back of your hand when you move? Or do you feel the space between your fingers that you move? And in order to feel, you really need to listen. You need to listen. It's not enough to give an order to your body. A lot of dancers many times give an order or obey. And we're lacking many times the listening. And the listening is the most important part. Because when you listen, and this is when you learn about your weakness, about blockages, you realize where it is that you have numbness or atrophy. You also discover pleasure by listening. It's the right, you can have a pleasure from doing something, from obeying something, but the pleasure of dancing is really coming from listening. And then you start relating to your bones and flesh and nerve system and the flow of information. So it's a lot about delicacy. It's a lot about efficiency. It's a lot about the animal instincts that we have, and on top of that animal instinct, we can then create a process of thinking and fantasy. So this is all connected to this kind of listening that is very, very important. And the more we develop as dancers, the more this is very big part of how we reflect about what we do, is this act of listening.
It seems like that listening or that attentiveness is not only the dancer with his or her body, but it exists between you and your dancers. It's an incredibly intimate relationship. And in this piece even, I mean, there are moments of real collaboration. The piece opens with solos. Every dancer does a solo. And as you told me, that came out of their own work. And I guess I'm so fascinated with your relationship with them, because I talk about this a lot with Ohad, but I really envy it. All day I'm alone with myself and my work, and I sometimes think of him with all those dancers, how lucky he is that however you feel, you come to work and you have to confront them and how they feel, and you get from them. They give you all the time. I sometimes wonder, can you say to them, as like in this wonderful film of Pina Bausch's work that Wim Wenders did, she would say to them, show me a gesture for joy, or what does joy look like today? And well, they would give you something, I suppose. So I guess I'm curious if you can talk a little bit about that relationship with them, and how maybe where a piece is born, their role in collaborating or choreographing a piece like Sade 21.
Well, for Sade actually is the first work that many times I have thanked the dancers for their part but in Sade they're actually credited for making it with me. Sade is by myself with the collaboration of the dancers. They get the full credit for it. And the credit is not just for their suggestion of movement. They really even if they don't speak and they come to the studio, they're already available, they're already generous, they're already rebellious, they're already fragile, and they're already strong or weak. All the things creative, and all the things really affect. I don't have an idea of what I'm going to do many times, or if I have an idea, it's just an excuse to start something that I don't know where I'm going. And where I'm going with them. And so in this process, we were doing a lot of things together. I always tell them, when I start the work, I will always create I would say a playground or a game, and a game has rules and codes. So I try to tell them the codes. I tell them what the rule of this game that we're going, and once we know the rules, we know how we obey them. We can then develop our skills to play the game. You know, you can play a game in many different levels, but you need to know the rule of the game. So we do have rules, and then we start developing the skills to play the game. And in this case, they also helped me to break those rules, because I could bring rules, and they will show me how much better it will be is to forget about the rules and create new ones. It's like giving up old ideas for better solutions. So they show me that too.
When we were watching the piece together this morning, you were telling me about these pictures that part of the composition involved developing these almost still pictures that you would then incorporate and begin to shuffle. And maybe you can tell the audience a little bit about this, how it happened.
Well, I had this idea that I wanted to go a little bit against what is very easy for me sometimes, is to create flow and information, moving people. I wanted to create something that that if I photograph it, I still feel the atmosphere of it. A lot of this piece is a lot about creating this atmosphere. So I said, let's create what we call pictures, and we create a bank of many things that has to do with what we call pictures, though they were living picture. It wasn't like static, and they helped me to create maybe 100 pictures that later on I could shuffle, reorganize, and compose with it different moments in the piece.
Another thing I feel a lot in your work which surprises me, I don't know why, but I guess I'm used to things in art that move me being often melancholy. A few months ago I was invited to do this radio program in England on BBC called Private Passions, and you sort of choose some music that's meant something to you over the years, and you sit with this composer and you listen to the music and then you talk about the music. And after we recorded the program, I felt so sorry. I said, I'm so sorry I chose such sad pieces. And he said, you know, almost everybody says that after the show, that we really, maybe this is what moves us. But actually in your work, there's so much joy. It's really this palpable part that I'm often left feeling incredibly moved, and sadness is a huge part of that. But there's this uplifting feeling of joy always, and it sometimes bursts through that moments in the works. And I've been thinking about that a lot, because something I wonder about in my own work. I sometimes feel like one has to remember again the old joy, where one started creating out of. I think one always begins with a sense of joy in creating, but then over time it becomes a job, or it becomes professionalized, or your life changes, and it's hard to remember the origin of that or how to connect to that again. And I wondered whether in dance, there's something simply about moving that is pleasurable. There's no way around it. Just to begin to move, no matter how you feel that day. If you go to a Gaga class at 8 p.m., you begin to feel joy just to have that. So somehow, are you conscious of joy in your work? Does it come out naturally, or is it something you think about? Or is the opposite true? Are you thinking more about things that are difficult or tragic?
Actually, in our movement language, Gaga, and our daily training, it's very fundamental for the dancers to connect effort to pleasure. Which is, by the way, pleasure and joy is also something that we separate between. We don't see joy as the definition of pleasure.
How do you what's the distinction?
Well, one of the first, just about the idea of pleasure, because pleasure in movement can really protect the dancers from hurting themselves. A lot of what motivates dancers is ambition, is the competition, is a goal, and I try to eliminate it from our reason or what manage us. Though we can be aware of our ambition, we can be aware of our goals, but this shouldn't manage why we dance. So pleasure in dance really protect the body and create longevity, create balance, flow, and a kind of much more honest research about the discoveries. And the difference for me between pleasure and joy is that joy is something that has to do, it's more brainy, it's more something that you can be passive and still experience joy. Some kind more holistic, and pleasure is more flesh. It's more, but the dancers need to discover pleasure and also the idea of joy, because pleasure and joy together, I would say bliss. And bliss, you know, it's nice to be there. But giving birth, I heard from a woman once, she said it was bliss. So
that I don't know. Not if your kid is 9 pounds 7 ounces, as mine was. The other thing that surprises me a lot in your work is humor, and it seems it's never the same. That for one audience, or one performance, something is funny, and another one it isn't. But something that I was very aware of that summer, I was in Israel because I sent my oldest son to a Hebrew-speaking nursery school. And without language, he was 4.5 years old, without being able to speak to other children, the thing he fell back on was his body and humor. That he could find a way to make a connection with the other kids by being funny with his body. And it's, again, this is interesting to me, like these shortcuts that maybe you have in dance to things that, well, we have our own shortcuts in language, but they're very, very different. And I was wondering how humor evolves in the pieces, whether something happens that surprises you, that's funny, and you keep it, or something that you don't mean to be funny, but it turns out it is, or vice versa. Is it important to you somehow? It's unexpected, I find, in dance, to laugh.
Well, first, I think part of it is that I really being aware of the importance of laughing at myself, laughing at ourselves, taking what we do serious but not taking ourselves too serious, and see the difference between recognizing the importance of it. And then the idea of humor for me is I don't know jokes. I don't make so much jokes, but I like to tickle. So I think of my humor is much more the ability to tickle than to tell jokes. Did I answer your question?
You tickle the audience.
Tickle the audience.
Something I think a lot about in my own work is the limitations of what I often wish, maybe that's why I love going to watch dance, I wish that I could do that or have that. I understand that each medium has its own limitations, but when I'm writing, so often I feel frustrated by the fact that what I write has to mean something. It can't just be felt, but it actually has to be understood. It seems like a simple thing, but it's crazy. It's like constantly banging into this wall. And I wonder whether I can't imagine that there's that limitation dance. We talked this morning about, of course, narratives developing, and you don't need them, but sometimes you like them, and the audience can be aware of it. It doesn't have to be aware of it, it still works. Although your work feels sometimes more narrative to me than other choreographers, but I wonder whether there are for you these walls in movement, in dance, that you feel yourself banging up against, or you're trying to get around somehow.
The more and more, actually, I feel the need to be understood and less to be loved, actually, in my work. No, I can remember the need to be loved was a lot stronger than the need to be understood. And now I feel that maybe in order to be loved, I first need to be understood. And this idea of what does it mean to be understood, what do I want people to understand, is not the narrative, but is is the offering. What do I offer you? I offer you elements that are organized in a particular way, and they have volume, they have exaggeration and understatements, they have colors and texture, they have dynamics, different dynamics, and I offer it in a scope of a big stage that if you just focus on one person, and then you might lose a lot, and then if you lose a lot, how generous you are towards me and towards yourself, that you are watching something while you're losing other things. Do you get frustrated by it or not? Or you feel, I don't care as long as I get that. So all those things create an understanding and ability on many different levels of an audience with what I offer them and what they get and what they understand. And I'd like a certain understanding that can be almost described is I want you to recognize my composition. I want you to recognize how I connect elements together, and what turns you on at the end is because you understand me, not because you love. And this is what makes you even cry when you saw Mamutot, is this understanding. So as a writer that you want, that I don't think it's less for me the need to be understood than you.
No, I don't imagine it is.
Yeah.
Okay. We went fast. I think we should. I've got the 5-minute signal, but I want to say something before we end about Gaga. This seems like such an important part of what you've done, what you've created, what will go on, how the rest of us can take part in this, because it hurts sometimes to be in the audience and not to be able to do what your dancers can do and what you can do. That's something else I wanted to ask you about too, but we're running out of time, about how it feels to watch these young people do what you can't do anymore with your body, but what you ask them to do. Seems to me it would be a kind of yearning. But anyway, I wanted you to tell us a little bit about Gaga and about how it became a kind of laboratory for you, and about maybe how we all can do that.
So Gaga is the name for the movement language that I discovered over the years, and I gave it the name Gaga about 10 years ago, though I've been doing it longer. It's how we train in the company. It's a workout on a daily basis, and it's also a reflection, almost in a philosophical way, about why we dance and how we dance. There is a venue for non-dancers too, and what non-dancers and dancers do, there's a lot of common. But when we have open classes and sessions for people that don't have any ambition to be on stage, that's what Nicole was actually practicing and doing very well. It has a lot to do with yielding. And through yielding, you actually discover places of atrophy, you groove, you learn that dance is not music dependent, you learn about explosive, you learn a lot about the efficiency of movement, you learn that you can strengthen your engine, and by strengthening your engines you don't need to solve your problems, but you can carry them, and it becomes easier because you have more energy, more force to carry what before seemed very heavy, become lighter. And it's a lot about the scope of sensations, and delicacy is really at the heart of it. When I said delicacy, it can still be, you can still use your body as a weapon, but it becomes very efficient by the way you listen to it. So a lot of this that has nothing to do with dancing, it has to do with living, with being alive and being the animal you are and all that.
I think you're doing a workshop that's open to the public, or no, it's not?
Do we?
Is there a workshop? There is one, so maybe afterwards you can find information about that, but I encourage you all to go, no matter how intimidated you are about the idea of dancing, because I love to dance my whole life, but every dance class I ever took, I left feeling a little bit sad or a little bit frustrated because I can't put all those combinations together, I just can't remember them. And this is about, it's about improvisation, it's about being yourself as a dancer. Everybody is doing his or her own thing, but you're just you're getting a kind of cue, or getting an idea of how to move, and you begin to discover things in your body that you just didn't know existed, and you discover ways of moving yourself that you didn't know that you had, which are feel completely natural. It's wonderful. So
it's a lot about being aware of your movement habits, giving up some habits and acquire new ones, and which eventually help all of us. Even the best athletes have places of atrophy in their bodies, just because we use where we're strong. So a lot of it is discovering where we're weak, and connect this to the flow of energy and pleasure of movement. We can get to a lot of group muscles and nerves endings, and that has been numb.
And for most of us who forget that we actually have bodies, because we spend all of our lives in front of a computer, which I think is probably most of us, it's just remembering that you have a body, remembering that you can move in all these ways, which you just simply don't have an opportunity to do all day long.
But even people who use their body forget that they have body, just because people go to the gym and develop their muscles. It doesn't mean they're tuned in with their body. You know, what they measure or what they listen to is not necessarily what we're talking about. So it's nice to be able to connect to our body from that angle.
Maybe I can ask one more question before the end, and that is, how do you continue to change in your work? This is also something I think about all the time in my own work. It feels so important not to do the thing that came before, but how do you open this chance for yourself?
Well, it's knowing that process of creation can bring me to places I've never been and cannot even imagine exist. I know that I can, with the process, not before, I can get there. And also because of Gaga and the discoveries, the constant discoveries, and I know there'll be more. You know, just recently we kind of discovered the importance of recognize the echo of movement. There is an echo for everything you do. Why babies move so different from adults is because everything they do has a different, they move their arm and there's echo, they move. And so this idea of echo, it's vast and it's huge. There's another discovery from last week. I will not tell you just because we're out of time, but just because we are constantly discovering new stuff. Tell you? Okay, we have time to tell them the new discovery? Yes? Okay. Well, actually, and even gave it a name. It's called shocking. But it's called shocking not because of the shock effect, because in Hebrew, this area of our leg, in Hebrew, it's called shock. This is a shock. So I name it shocking. But it has to do with something very simple. One of the things that we're doing in Gaga, we're moving our hands from our heart. Yeah, we move our hands, but we feel it from our... But now we actually, there is a very... Let's do it together. If you put your right hand and move your hand, and you can feel how much action there is in your forehand. Yeah? You can feel it. So now if you just think that I want to move my hand, but I'm using my forehand to move. I'm thinking of my forehand, but I'm moving my hand from my forehand. Now it's the same for my toes and my foot. If you put your hands on your shock, on your shins, and you move your foot, you can feel how much action there is in your shins. So if you become aware of it, and you move your toes, but you don't think of your toes, you start thinking of this area. So this has to do with echo, and this has to do with where movement actually can... So movement in your body happen somewhere, but it echo very far in other places. So this can go very far. I can move my hand and I can think of my... Never mind, but this idea of echo and moving from far places from where the action actually happened create a lot of new connections and waking up and new coordination, new possibilities. And also it gives something that is very important that might be nice to end to, is that you don't let the attention to details make you forget the sense of the whole.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Pleasure.
We're going to get going right now. Quick turnaround. Thank you to our sound man who's having a good time making these turnarounds go so quickly. We're here every day with the Lunchtime Illuminations. My name is Derek Andrews. I'm the music curator for Luminato on the stage here. And I am going to introduce this band and explain why we have klezmer music following the discussion that we just had. With reference to the festival that Eric Stein, the gentleman to my left, is the artistic director of the Ashkenaz Festival. I worked at Harborfront when Ashkenaz began many, many years ago, and the artistic director, David Bookbinder, leads a klezmer band called Flying Bulgar Klezmer Band that many of you have seen, I'm sure, and love. And klezmer music was at the heart of Ashkenaz at its beginning, and that artistic director moved on, and other artistic directors of Ashkenaz have carried on to celebrate the revival of Jewish culture in this city and in the world, and the festival has really evolved. So I want to give Eric a plug by inviting him here to perform his music with his band. They are an award-winning, internationally recognized, wonderful representation of klezmer music today. You'll hear it all. But I also wanted to acknowledge that Eric does this fine work as an artistic director of a festival. We have an artistic director of a dance company, all this artistic direction, and a guy who is a great player at the same time. But I wanted to acknowledge Ashkenaz from a Luminato point of view, that we are partners in celebrating culture in this city. And let's hear some great music from this city. Please welcome Beyond the Pale.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. That was a little Romanian thing to get us warmed up. We're going to do some klezmer music right here. This is Hora and Bulgar, and if you're keeping score, it's in the key of C. That's Martin Van de Ven on the clarinet. Thank you very much. We only have a few minutes left here. I just want to introduce the band very quickly. On the violin, Alexander Gajic. On the accordion, Milos Popovic. On clarinet, Martin Van de Ven. On bass, Joe Phillips.
And on mandolin, Eric Stein.
Thank you so much for Beyond the Pale. Big thanks to Luminato and Derek and all the folks that make it happen here. We're going to do one last thing. We're going to do a Serbian gypsy tune.
Beyond the Pale, one more time. We don't get to hear these guys enough. Aren't they great?